Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video. This one is going to be on a pretty hot topic for the Stranger Things finale. So, first and foremost, spoiler alert if you have not watched the season, or I should say series finale of Stranger Things, please please click off this video. Not sure why I clicked it in the first place, but um, we are going to be breaking down pretty much Eleven's fate. As you know, if you've seen the episode, whether or not Elle lives or dies is kind of up in the air. The showrunners have left it up to the audience to interpret how they would like the ending to be for her. But I don't like that. I don't want to think or wonder. I like to know stuff. So we're gonna be breaking down what actually happened based on the clues that we were given in this episode and previous episodes, and we're going to break down what actually happened. So we're going to be showing proof of what I think happened, or what I should say, I strongly feel happened. I don't even just think. I'm pretty sure this is what happened, but we're going to go through it. All right, so we're going to start by going through the timeline of what happened that during that night when they were, that battle, and then coming back down for the tower, and everything that happened at the MacZ, and everything that happened in Hawkins' lab. We're going to go through a timeline of what happened. Then we're going to go through the version that Mike told us. And then we're going to show evidence to pretty much present what I feel actually happened. So I will be showing evidence and some screenshots as proof, so you guys can see this for yourself as well. So, getting right into it. We're going to start at the moment at the Hawkins lab where Callie was shot. And side note, rest in peace to Callie. She didn't deserve what they did to her character this season, but that's a whole other topic. But when Callie is shot, Eleven is kind of, crouched over her, kind of consoling her. Hopper tells Eleven to put pressure on the wound. He leaves the room to get some first aid, and when he comes back, Callie is dead. Okay. Now, we're going to come back to this later, but again, right now we're just starting off by going through the timeline of what we were shown the first time through. So, Callie is shot, Callie dies. Okay. 11 goes up into the void by RPG, not even RPG, by Super Mario jumping through the rocks, or up through the rocks into the void. She fights the Mind Flayer and Vecna. Our group wins. They rescue the kids. They come back down. They descend the tower, and then they load all the kids and everyone into the big bike truck, which is driven by Steve, and with Robin up front with him. Okay, now, once they enter, and I kind of knew this was going to happen, because even though they had just defeated the Mind Flayer, I knew the military was still out there, and it was too much of a happy moment, so I kind of knew there was going to be more to it. But the moment they enter the MacZ, Dr. K and her goons are there waiting. They have like the, I forget what it's called, like the strip, is it a spike strip that kind of cuts the tires when they drive over it? So they have the spike strip just waiting for them to come back. So as soon as they come back, both the car that Hopper and Murray are in, as well as the big bike truck, they both hit the spikes. The vehicles are immobilized. They're kind of getting everyone out at gunpoint. Now, we see 11 exit the truck. Right, we see her jump out of the truck, and then there's a shot that goes to Hopper, because Hopper notices the kryptonite, the hedgehogs, the sound devices that the military use. Hopper notices the sound devices. Okay, and he immediately starts looking for Elle. So he immediately is trying to find, because he knows what those devices do to her. Okay, so he's looking for her, and then at this point, after he can't find her, then it cuts to Dr. K. Where's the girl? It shows Mike and Dustin. Hey, have you seen Elle? So this is the point where Elle somehow, some way, goes from the middle of the group. And I'll show the screenshot of this. She's in the middle of the group, right? And then next thing you know, she is at the gate. She's in the upside down, pretty much at the gate. And then it shows Mike running up to her. Mike gets pulled into the void. And then they have this emotional, dialogue between the two. Elle's pretty much saying goodbye. She pushes Mike out of the void, and then she stands pretty much in the same spot with her arms out. And when the bomb goes off inside the upside down, it destroys the upside down, it destroys the gate, it takes 11 with it. That is what we are seeing. Okay. And then in the epilogue of the show, Mike is basically telling a different version of what we saw. So what Mike is telling us is that actually, let me backtrack. So before we even get to Mike telling his story, there's two things that happen. So one is there's a conversation between Mike and Hopper at the memorial of the quote-unquote earthquake victims. Okay. Now at this point, Mike is still under the impression, in his mind, 11 is dead still at this point. So keep that in mind, that when Mike is speaking to Hopper at the memorial, he still thinks 11 is dead. Now, fast forward to the graduation. After Dustin's speech, there's the principal grabs the mic, and then there's feedback on the speakers. Excuse me. So when the feedback happens, it cuts to Mike, and then it shows him flashing back to that moment where they were all at the Max Z. And there's a shot that focuses on the hedgehogs, the Soundwave devices. It focuses on them, and then it actually does a match cut from the kryptonite to the speakers at the graduation. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to come back to that as well when we get to the evidence part. Then we see Mike and the group playing D&D. They're playing the campaign Curse of Strahd, which I personally have played that campaign. It's really fun. I played with my friends, and it is difficult, I will say. But basically, they're playing Curse of Strahd. They're at the final battle. Dustin goes down, and the only character that's still available is Will the Wise. But there's a field, I forget what they called it, but basically there's a field area around Strahd, the final boss, where Will cannot use magic. And then we see Max say to him, "Oh, smack it with your staff or something." And they know that that's not going to do enough damage, and then he would just pretty much be taken down the next turn, Will's character. But then Dustin remembers an incantation that they were given earlier in the campaign to summon the Mage of St. Markovia. They say the incantation, it summons the Mage, and we all know that from previous seasons, the Mage is to symbolize 11. Okay, so he even says that when I think it's season 2, when Mike when he's talking to Max in the school, and he's talking about their party, and he says basically, "Oh, Dustin's our bard, Will's our wizard, Elle's our mage." He says that. Okay, so the mage saves them, and then they're kind of talking about the end of the campaign, and then when he gives them each their own stories, as far as like the actual characters, Dustin and Lucas and Max and Will, when he's giving them their endings, if you will, they're saying he says that there's a story that he cannot tell, and he's talking about the mage, and then they do these cuts where he's talking about the mage, and it's almost like he's talking in code, but he doesn't really have to. But he basically is saying, "Oh, the mage casts Sunbeam, but did anyone ask how is she able to cast Sunbeam?" And then Dustin thinks back, and he goes, "Oh, I forget the name of the device of the field that they can't use magic." So they're talking in D&D terms, but they're showing us the audience. They're showing us the Max Z. They're showing us 11. And when they're saying that she couldn't have cast that spell because of the kryptonite. 11 wouldn't have been able to bring Mike into the void because her powers were being suppressed there. Okay, that's another major clue. So next we see so he talks about how the maid is clever and how she devised a plan with her sister, and that her sister cast a spell of invisibility. And then they show basically 11 at the Maxi opening the door to Radio Shack, going into the tunnels. Okay, and then he says that the sister casts one final spell, and then it shows 11 standing there, and her image, if you will, is twitching, kind of like we saw in episode 5 when Kali had an image of herself at the lab, and then Kay kind of realized something was up. The finger was twitching, and then it kind of like fizzled, and she realized it was an illusion. Okay, now with all that being said, that is what we were told on both what we saw originally, and that is Mike's version. Now we're going to talk about evidence as to what actually happened. Okay, so we go back to Callie's death scene. Okay, so when Callie gets shot, Hopper leaves the room to get the first aid. This does happen. Okay, and then now when he comes back, when Hopper comes back into the room, Callie is dead, but I don't think she is, and the reason why is because when it shows that shot and it's zooming in on Callie and 11 sitting over her. Now, the way that the shot is framed, it wants you to look at 11 until they zoom in on just Callie. But if you look at Callie's face when it's zooming in on her and 11, her eyes are closed, but her eyes are moving. Okay, and I'm going to try to put the clip in here, but her eyes are moving, so that's the first clue. Okay, now when 11 and the gang are in the truck going back to the Maxi, we see that 11 has like her arm like around, she's grasping Mike's arm, so she's making physical contact. So 11 is in the truck. I heard some people saying something like, oh, you know, she never entered the truck and that's why Derek was looking at him all weird. No. So 11 was in the truck. Okay, because we saw her make physical contact. If she was an illusion, she would not have been able to touch him. He would not have been able to touch her. So 11 is in the truck. And when we get to the Max Z, and this is where everything happens. So when we get to the Max Z, they're unloading the truck. They're getting everyone out of the truck. Okay, we see 11 jump out. She kind of jumps out with her hands up like this. Okay, we see her jump and we see her land, and right where you see 11 land, she is in the middle of like 20 people. Okay, now let me ask you this: if this was not the case as far as Callie casting invisibility, if this wasn't what it was, then how would she have gotten to the gate with, again, just in the immediate area where she's in, there's like 15 to 20 people in just that little area. There's no way she could have gotten there to the gate, which is pretty much like the main spectacle of the area, without anyone seeing. That's number one. Okay, number two is that when we think about Callie's powers, okay, she explained this in season 2 when her and 11 were on the rooftop. She can make people see or not see whatever she chooses. Okay, that is the way her powers work. So what Mike was saying as far as Callie casting the spell of invisibility, what he's basically saying is Callie is using her power to make everyone that's there not see out. Okay, so we do see a shot when Mike is giving his version of things where we basically see 11 go into, while she's invisible, she goes into the Radio Shack, into the tunnels, and that's how she escapes. Okay, and then we know from episode 5 that the range on Callie's powers, and I did talk about this when I broke down the trailer for Volume 2. But yeah, we see the range on her powers is pretty insane. Okay, so after she made them not see 11, the next thing we see is Ella's at the gate. She's not moving at all. She's not. The only time she moves is when Mike gets brought into the void. But again, we do know that Ella's able to bring people there because she did that with Max. Her and Callie, like she brought Callie in and then she brought Max in. So we know she's able to do that. That's fine. But two things. One, the sound suppressors were there. Okay, and with the sound suppressors, it's kind of twofold because not only would she not have been able to do that, but we've seen in previous shots of this season, when the sound suppressors, or the kryptonite, if you will, whenever it's aimed at Elle, it causes excruciating pain to the point where she is like either immobilized or she's like, curled up into a ball. She's in like the fetal position. She's covering her ear. But none of that is happening here. When we see Elle standing there, she is completely calm. Okay. So she wouldn't have, even if she was trying to get to the gate, she wouldn't have been able to physically get there because the sound suppressors were there. Okay. But also, when we saw earlier in the season, when 11 and Callie were in the void together, whenever she is there and she comes back, and this might actually go into previous seasons as well because technically it's using her powers, her nose bleeds when she comes back from the void. But when we see Elle, her nose is not bleeding. There is no nosebleed. Okay, so there's no nosebleed. She wouldn't have been able to use her powers anyways. Okay, and then the big one here is the final pose, that when Ella's kind of standing there with her arms out. So she's standing there with her arms, like kind of like a T pose, and then, but a key point here is that both of her wrists are facing forward. Okay, and if you look at that shot, folks, what do we not see on 11's wrist? It's a defining part of her. We do not see the 11 tattoo that she was given when she was a kid. There's no tattoo. There's no 11 tattoo. So we have no nosebleed. We have no tattoo. We have, her using her powers where she's not supposed to be able to use them. So to me, this is pointing at her still being alive, to me. Okay. And if we go further than that, right after that scene where 11 vanishes, where the Upside Down vanishes and it takes Elle with her, it cuts to black, and then we hear a heartbeat. If you listen to that part where the screen is black, there's a heartbeat, and then they kind of transition that into the person hammering the bricks. Okay, so that to me is a clue that they're trying to give. Heartbeat obviously is a sign of life, so this is the show's way of hinting at her being alive, to me. Another clue is that, again, I spoke on it earlier, where Mike was with Hopper and he's sitting on the bench and they're talking. During that time, Mike is still under the impression that 11 is gone, right? But later that day, when he's at the graduation, when the feedback comes on and it kind of cuts back and forth between the Max Z and then the speaker that Mike is looking at. And if you look at Mike's face during this moment, what's happening here is that that is the realization moment. So the feedback hitting the speakers reminded Mike to that moment in the Max Z where he's like, oh wait, that's where he put it together, basically, that wait a second, these sound devices were here, but she was still able to use her power. And that's why he brought it up during the D&D game, because it didn't cross his mind until that moment where he was at the graduation and he heard the feedback on the speakers. It kind of all clicked to Mike during that moment. Okay, so to recap what we have as far as evidence. Okay, we have 11 taking Mike into the void, but she can't use her powers because of the sound suppression devices. We have no nosebleed after the void. We have no 11 tattoo when she's standing there. Okay. To me, those three alone, you just given everything else, I feel like those three alone cement the fact that she's still alive to me. So I'm not even gonna say, because the whole, I believe, I'm not even gonna say I believe. I'm gonna say I know that 11's still alive. Okay, so let me know what you guys think. This was a shorter version video than I normally do, but I wanted to get my thoughts on this out there for you guys. So let me know, do you agree? Is she still out there? Do you think she's just gone? Let me know your thoughts on this, folks, with the evidence that we got. I really want to hear some feedback from you guys. So let me know in the comments what you guys think, and subscribe for more content, like the video, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.